Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you could join me. Today we're going to be talking about Oregon, the Beaver State. Now, I looked up the name of the state, and basically the consensus is we don't know where it came from. There are two possible theories. One is that there's a French word, ouragan, something like that. It means hurricane or storm, and the name was applied to the Columbia River, and then from there it was applied to the state. And the second theory is that there's a Spanish word very similar to Oregon, but the Spanish, for some reason, so this is where it gets muddy and where I think that the first one holds more strength than the second one, because apparently they applied it to the Wisconsin River, but that it was then the name was then given to the Columbia River, and from there it was then given to the territory and the state and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like I said, I'm more inclined to believe the first one because the name was applied by the Spanish to the Wisconsin River, not the Columbia River. I'm not sure where they decided that, it meant the Columbia River. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the Beaver State part, though, we're pretty sure. So the beaver was a very valuable resource in the early days of the settlement of the state. So the fur trade was really big at the time, and so there was a lot of interest in beaver pelts, that kind of thing. It pulled people into the state, and from there, or into the territory, and from there it became a state. So at that point, that point in the state's history, the beaver was very important. And then later, it became a symbol of conservation for the state and preservation of natural resources. So that's why it's called the Beaver State. All right. Moving on to the facts about the state. So they achieved statehood February 14th, 1859. It is the 33rd state to join the Union. The capital is Salem. Population 4,246,155, making the 27th populous state. The area is 98,381 square miles, or 254,806 kilometers squared, making it the 9th largest state. Largest cities in Oregon are Portland, Salem, Eugene, and Gresham. Okay, so European exploration into what would become the state of Oregon started in the 16th century with the Spanish. The Spanish at that particular point in time didn't seem to have a lot of interest in the state, and really nothing happened until much, much later. So British came, did some exploration in the 18th century, but for reasons of the American Revolution and whatever else, they couldn't pursue more exploration into the state. And then the Americans, 19th century, we have Robert Gray and the Lewis and Clark expedition as well. Those are the two areas, or the two main influences exploration-wise. So Lewis and Clark were looking for an overland route to the Pacific Ocean. Robert Gray was a sea captain that explored the Columbia River. So, and then we have the Oregon Trail and the fur trade. So the fur trade, what I should say probably is that the fur trade created the need for the Oregon Trail. So we have the fur trade. Beaver pelts are important to the fur trade, so we have a lot of trappers and traders and stuff going in, creating settlements in Oregon, and that led to the I don't want to say construction, because construction's not the right word, blazing of the Oregon Trail. So there's a trail basically from the eastern part of the United States through much of the western part of the United States out into into Oregon. It was the inspiration for a very influential early computer game called Oregon Trail. And then the continued use of or continuing demand for natural resources really did drive settlement and exploration and industry in Oregon, even to this day. So, geography of Oregon. We have the coastal region, the Cascade Range, the Willamette Valley, eastern Oregon, southern Oregon, and central Oregon. So the coastal region, obviously, it's right there on the Pacific coast. So it's going to be very much influenced by that particular body of water. Then we have the Cascade Range. It runs north-south through the state, part of the Rocky Mountain that runs basically north-south through North America. Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, those are some of the areas there. Then we have the Willamette Valley. It's kind of in between the coastal region and the Cascade Range. And it's actually known for its wine. So fruits, vegetables, and other crops, kind of the breadbasket there of Oregon. Then we have eastern Oregon. So we have deserts out in the eastern Oregon. Ranching, agriculture, outdoor recreation, part of that. And then we have southern Oregon. It's part of the Cascade Range. But it ends up being somewhat distinct because it's because of the difference in most likely nearness to the Pacific Ocean. It ends up being a little bit different. Then we have Central Oregon, which apparently is, again, desert. So, yeah, arid climate, volcanic formations, hiking, rock climbing, other stuff like that is popular in that area. Now, the climate, Oregon is a bit weird as far as the climate goes because it's kind of got three climates in it. We have, since we're right there on the Pacific Ocean, it's got an oceanic climate. But because it bleeds over into the mountains and stuff, you kind of have this what ends up creating like a Mediterranean climate in the middle, and then as it goes out towards the east, it ends up becoming more of a continental climate. So they have just, towards the coast, it's wetter, so you have a lot more rain and fog along that part of the state. And then you get into the east, and because the mountains are in the way, the water basically stays on one side, and so you have the desert out to the other. So you get a lot of hot, drier weather as you go towards the east. So you're having this, kind of blend in the middle, and then the two extremes on either side. All right. Oregon is known for technology, agriculture, forestry and wood products, tourism, manufacturing, and renewable energy. So in the area of tech, we have Intel has presence there in Oregon. Apparently Nike is considered a tech leader now. They're not just for shoes. Tektronix, FLIR Systems, Tripwire are all out there. In agriculture, Research Fine Foods, Columbia Empire Farms, Hazelnut Growers of Oregon, Stallbush Island Farms. Forestry and wood, we have Roseburg Forest, Weyerhaeuser Company, Potlatch Deltic Corporation, Swanson Group. manufacturing, we get back into Intel. They have, again, I mean, Intel is a tech giant, but they also manufacture that tech. So then Precision Cast Parts Corporation, Daimler Trucks, North America, Lattice Semiconductor, FLIR Systems again. Then into renewable energy, Avangrid Renewables, Iberdrola Renewables, Portland General Electric, Eon Climate and Renewables. Yeah, so that's they don't have it seems that they don't have as wide a base in their industry. I mean, obviously you're going to have the smaller companies that are going to fit into those niche or not niche but niches between the tech companies and agriculture and whatever else. I shouldn't say tech companies. What I should say is they're going to fit in between these. You're going to have people that are going to be facilitating the technology in agriculture and forestry and wood and tourism and manufacturing and renewable energies. So there's a lot more going on, but the big ones are, it's not spread among quite as many different industries there in Oregon. All right. So tourism, I have been to Oregon. It's one of the states that I have visited. It was interesting. A lot wetter than than I'm used to. I'm from a very dry climate, so I mostly visited towards the coast. I've driven through, but we didn't really stop. What we were doing is getting to the coast. And so we were we were in that much more wet, damp area. Anyway, typical outdoor activities, hiking, biking, camping, all that stuff. Oregon is a great place for that kind of activity. There's a lot of national parks. Crater Lake National Park is one of the big ones. Columbia River Gorge. There's, let's see, Cascade Mountains. So you're going to find a lot of those activities. And we mentioned a few of them earlier. However, a lot of people come to Oregon to visit Portland. Portland is kind of that cultural hub there in Oregon. Now, I've heard recently, within the past 10 years or so, that even people who in the past have liked visiting Portland, they're like, Portland's, you don't really want to go to Portland anymore. So, yeah. Anyway, Portland, it seems, it has art, culture, food. There's parks and gardens. Apparently the Portland Japanese Garden, International Rose Test Garden. There's a lot of things to do there. Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. One thing I did not think of when I was doing this was, if I think of wine tasting, I think Italy, France, California. Excuse me. I know there are other places for wine, but those are the big three that come to mind. So when I was looking up tourism information and they're like, oh yeah, come taste our wine. Like, really? In Oregon? I didn't even know they made wine out there, but apparently the Willamette Valley is really a hotbed for wine. So anyway, move on to the trivia portion of our show, the part that really speaks to me. So, Oregon, some weird laws. Apparently, you cannot eat ice cream on Sundays. Not Sunday the ice cream, but Sunday the day. As it's kind of hard to talk about Sunday and ice cream at the same time without specifying, do you mean the day of the week, or do you mean the ice cream with like toppings on it? So it is illegal to eat ice cream on the day of rest, on the Sabbath. However, if you count Saturday as the Sabbath, then you're fine. But Sunday, not so much. Obviously, it's not enforced. Nobody cares anymore. But how it even got on the books in the first place, I guess they just didn't want people being happy on Sunday. I don't know. You cannot go hunting in a cemetery. I mean, one, it makes sense. Don't go shoot things in a cemetery. But seriously, was there so much hunting going on in cemeteries that they had to enshrine it in a law? Apparently, you cannot juggle unless you have a license. Again, probably not enforced anymore. And why they even thought they needed to enforce it were there so many freelance jugglers in Oregon that they needed to, again, I mean, this goes back to the hunting in the cemetery, where there's so many uncouth hunters and jugglers in Oregon. Who knows? You are required to drip dry your dishes. So if you have a dishwasher that has a drying feature, you're breaking the law. My dishwasher would mean that I was breaking the law if I used the drying feature. Eating donuts, while not prohibited by law, you cannot eat donuts and walk backwards. Come on, Oregon. Really? Were there so many people eating donuts and walking backwards that you felt that you needed it? And again, this is not the only state who has a law against whistling underwater. Why? Were there so many people trying to whistle underwater? I would think that would be, dangerous. You're supposed to hold your breath underwater, not whistle. Anyway. So Oregon has what's called the Vortex. The Oregon Vortex. It's a roadside attraction. It's near a place called Gold Hill, Oregon. Has optical illusions and stuff. Yeah, interesting place to go there. A lot of Bigfoot sightings in the Pacific Northwest. I didn't realize before I started doing this and looking into different states, my assumption was that we had Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest. So Washington State, Oregon State, kind of going into Idaho. And that's where Bigfoot ranged, maybe down into, Northern California, but that was it. But then I started this whole mess and found out that there are actually lots of places in the United States that supposedly have Bigfoot sightings all the time. But this was my understanding that Bigfoot, Portland, Oregon, not Portland, but the Oregon area, that's Bigfoot territory there. Apparently Portland has a unofficial slogan called "Keep Portland Weird," which may be why normal people no longer like going to Portland. There's better ways to draw tourists and things rather than saying our city is completely weird. They have the World Naked Bike Ride. Apparently, so in looking up this stuff, they have the World Naked Bike Ride. They say it's to promote body positivity, cycling advocacy, and sustainability. I think it is a mess. This is, again, one of those activities that should not be undertaken naked for obvious reasons. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I've had bike wrecks. They are not pretty. I had a friend who he was pedaling down the street, his chain came off, and he had to ditch his bike, and yeah, he was all scraped up. I mean, there's a reason. Now, his legs were fine, mostly because he was wearing pants at the time. But can you imagine your entire body just... Yeah, it's bad. Don't ride your bike naked. Seems really dumb. Okay. Apparently in Oregon, they also have UFO festivals. Let's see if I can... It's in McMinnville. And apparently, this is something that I didn't know until looking this stuff up, but the coastal region of Oregon has mysterious lights and unidentified flying objects, lots of them. And so they have a UFO festival there. The governor's bean feed, they have a tradition where the governor serves beans to the public. It started apparently in the early 1930s and has continued since then. Voodoo Donut, it's a donut shop. They have odd flavor combinations and shapes and toppings and all sorts of stuff. Now, if you're looking at the way I've spelled a donut and you're thinking, isn't donut spelled D-O-N-U-T? Well, yeah, it's also spelled that way, but this is actually the correct spelling. It's interesting the way language evolves over time. And then we have the Shanghai tunnels. Now, the Shanghai tunnels, there's tunnels underneath Old Town in Portland, and they have a lot of, like, they're supposedly haunted, and they were maybe, this is legend and supposition, not actually what's the word? It's not verified. There we go. Don't know why that slipped my mind, but it's not verified, but it's reported that they use these tunnels for human trafficking. And so maybe some of the people that were being trafficked died in the tunnels, and their spirits are haunting the tunnels underneath Portland. So anyway, that's it for Oregon. Let me know if you've been there. Let me know what you thought. Like, subscribe, put the bell on so you get notifications, comment down below, all that good stuff. Later.